All right, I got some comments here popping up. Rookie, hey, how you doing, man? He says, "Hi, Bruce. Can you please talk about the process of getting an ISO certification in an organization? An ISO certification. Do you mean? Could you be more specific? What you mean with by ISO certificate? Do you mean ISO cert, like ISSO, or because there's a different terminology for the ISO. There's an international standard for frameworks called the ISO 27001. I don't think you're talking about that. An ISO sometimes refers to an information system owner, but I think you're talking about. Oh, okay. You said all right. I'm seeing your other comments here. That will be the role. What will be the role of a GRC in the process of an organization ISO certification process? And you're referring to the International Standard Organization 27001. So 27001, my exposure to this, I was working with Verizon and we had clients where we had to make sure that they were in line with 27001 standard. And I was very surprised to realize that it's very similar to what you do in a NIST 8 with a NIST 800 or with a NIST CSF as an information system security officer. It's very, very similar. Um, they have what you're doing is you're helping the information system management, information security management system, which is a fancy way of saying governance, risk, and compliance for your organization, because that's what it's doing. What would their role be as a GRC analyst? It would be to help the organization to be in line with the clauses that you see in the ISO 27001. And so, from my understanding, there's four important clauses that that the organization is supposed to meet. And one of the top ones is the organization to understand the context, the how cybersecurity works in their organization. The leadership has to understand how cybersecurity is done. I know that sounds like a very nebulous thing to say, but like what are you actually doing? Security policy. So one of the best ways to explain to the organization and to articulate for the leadership to articulate what's the context of cybersecurity, what is the information system management, information security management system, is to do a policy, because the policy is going to be in line with, if you're using GDPR, if you have to be in line with FISMA or whatever regulations that have to be in that for the region that you're in. um, the policy will reflect that. The policy is going to say, okay, look, here's what everybody has to do for access control. If you have any kind of system that requires access control, here's what you do. You'll have multi-factor authentication at a high level. You're just going to explain everyone will have high a multi-factor authentication. There's no exceptions. That's just an example. That's not you wouldn't. That's just one example of what you would say. But another thing would be, I don't know, incident response. It would address the policy at a high level. Would address continuous monitoring. How are we going to monitor? Are we going to collect logs from what systems? It's going to collect. It's going to talk about access controls. It's going to talk about all the basic security practices. And so your role as a GRC analyst doing ISO 27000, making sure is for ISO 27001 would be to make sure the organization is in line with the ISO 2700 series standards. And there's more than one. There's ISO 27001, ISO 20005. So that's what you're going to do. So the best thing you can do is to start to read and understand the ISO 27001 standards. Let me see if I have that book available here. I think I might have it right here. Okay, I think this is, yeah, here it is right here. So this is a book I did about it. This book right here, all I did, all right, The Secret is all I did was I took the actual ISO 27001 standard 2022 and I just expanded on it. I bought the actual book. The pamphlet's only like 9 pages. The EU one that you get is 9 pages long or something. 10 pages? I don't know. It's pretty short. And it has a breakdown of all the clauses you have to do. And it's about $130, right? This is not $130, right? Um so this expands on what you do in each one of those clauses, and it gives you a big picture of, and you don't have to listen. There's tons of resources out there. You don't have to buy my book about it. There's awesome resources. Start with YouTube and start to understand ISO 27000 series. Understand the series because this breaks out into other uh, deeper breakdowns. Like the ISO 27002 is the controls. The equivalent would be the equivalent of this ISO 27001 for NIST 800 would be NIST 837, which is a breakdown of how an organization should meet ISO NIST 800. So that would be the same thing for ISO 27001 standards. You would use this one to give you a broad idea of what you're supposed to do for an information security management system. And then when you get into the controls, it'll be ISO 27002. And the equivalent of that in the NIST is the NIST 853, which is a security category. Is a catalog of all the security controls. So they both line up. It's crazy how similar all these frameworks are. And it kind of when you think about it, it makes sense because they all have to do best security practices. It's like the laws of physics. Like all of us are subject to gravity, right? All of us have to do, and just like in computers, there has to be some method of authentication.